A lonely, ordinary man with a dead-end job in Japan dies suddenly of a heart attack. But instead of eternal rest, he awakens to find himself reincarnated in a completely different world. This time as the son of a noble, blessed with mysterious godlike powers. This man's new name is Ars. In his previous life, Ars was just another face in the crowd. Overworked, overlooked, and living a dull existence, he never stood out. But when his life ended abruptly, fate gave him another chance. He opened his eyes in a lavish room, greeted by the gentle smile of a beautiful woman, his new mother. Confused, he thought he was in a hospital, until he noticed something impossible. A small dog, floating and flapping its wings, playfully circling the room. Moments later, a maid congratulated the noblewoman on the birth of her child. In the reflection of a mirror, Ars realized the truth. He had been reborn into another world, this time as a child of nobility. 3 years passed quietly. Ars grew up learning to read, write, and absorb knowledge about this new land. He discovered that the nation he was born into was called the Summerforth Kingdom, a powerful empire that had once been 7 different kingdoms before unifying through conquest. His family belonged to the nobility, ruling over a small village town named Lamberg. Life was luxurious compared to his past existence. He lived in a grand estate surrounded by servants who catered to his every need, with skilled chefs preparing delicious meals every day. But what fascinated Ars most was the existence of magic. Sadly, because of his young age, he wasn't yet able to practice it. Still, Ars wasn't ordinary. He had been born with a unique, secret ability, the power to see the stats of any person he looked at, revealing their talents, strengths, and weaknesses. One day, curious to test his gift, Ars visited the training hall where guards and villagers trained with weapons. Sitting quietly, he watched as a man repeatedly failed with the spear, stumbling with every attempt. Using his hidden power, Ars examined the man's stats. To his surprise, the man's talent with the spear and sword was low, barely at D rank. But in archery, his potential shone bright, an impressive B rank. Excited, Ars approached the man and suggested he try archery. The man laughed it off, dismissing bows as weapons for cowards and women. But because Ars was the future lord, he reluctantly obeyed. He picked up a bow, drew back an arrow, and fired. To everyone's shock, the arrow landed perfectly in the center of the target. The crowd thought it was just luck until he fired again and again, each shot hitting dead center. Everyone was stunned by the man's natural gift for archery. Grateful, he thanked Ars, who only smiled and brushed it off, claiming it was just instinct. He didn't want anyone to know about his true power, but Ars also realized the limitation of his skill. He couldn't see his own stats, leaving his own abilities a mystery. That night at dinner, he sat across from his intimidating father, a stern man whose aura filled the room. Ars glanced at him with his ability and was astonished. His father's stats were A rank across the board. He was so strong that he could single-handedly defeat 10 B rank swordsmen at once. His father questioned Ars about the man he had helped, and when Ars admitted he had guided him to archery, his father simply nodded. "It's a good trait for a future lord," he said, "to recognize talent in others." That conversation marked the beginning of Ars's deeper education in leadership. He learned about the empire's politics and discovered the corruption festering at its core. Farmers and commoners were suffering, revolting against unbearable conditions, while the rulers used brutal tactics and oppressive laws to crush dissent. To Ars, it felt eerily similar to the corruption of his old world. He realized that if things continued this way, civil war would engulf the continent. And when that happened, as the heir of Lamberg, he would be forced to lead his people into battle. The thought terrified him. He wasn't a warrior, not yet. How could someone like him protect his family and his people? The next morning, weighed down by these worries, Ars sneaked out of the estate disguised in a cloak. He wandered through the bustling village marketplace, curious to use his magic eye to search for hidden talents among the common folk. But person after person disappointed him. No one seemed to have exceptional potential. His eyes grew strained, watering from overuse of his ability. Just then, he heard a commotion. A door burst open, and a furious white woman hurled a young man onto the street. She shouted insults, calling him filthy and worthless. The crowd murmured, calling the boy a Malcolm. Ars didn't fully understand, but fragments of knowledge came back to him. The Malcolms were a race from a distant continent, once brought to Summerforth as slaves. They were treated as outcasts, despised and dehumanized. The young man, hungry and broken, sat on the ground, head lowered in shame. Without thinking, Ars stepped forward and offered him a piece of bread. The boy hesitated, stunned. No noble, let alone the future lord, had ever shown kindness to a Malcolm. The crowd whispered, shocked at what Ars was doing. Finally, the young man introduced himself as Ray. At first, Ray was cautious, unsure if this kindness was real. But for Ars, it was simple. He didn't see a worthless slave. He saw someone who deserved a chance. Our story continues with Rei, who slowly takes the bread and hungrily eats it. Meanwhile, Ars secretly activates his magic eye to check Rei's stats. To his absolute shock, Rei turns out to be incredibly powerful, with multiple A rank and even S rank skills. Ars is instantly reminded of Lord Raven, his own father, one of the strongest men alive. Realizing Rei's true potential, Ars can't hide his excitement. His eyes sparkle with admiration, but Rei just finds the boy creepy and starts to walk away after thanking him. Ars, however, refuses to give up. He follows Rei into an alley and finally reveals his true identity. He is the son of Lord Levent. Then he offers Rei a job as his bodyguard, even bribing him by promising delicious food. Though hesitant, Rei agrees, and the two head back to Ars's mansion. At the dining table, lavish dishes are presented before Ars. But when it comes to Rei, the maid, who clearly despises him, serves only a shabby plate of beans. She claims that Amalgam, someone of his background, doesn't deserve the same food as the future lord. The butler even tells Rei to leave once he's done. Ars, furious at their behavior, refuses to tolerate such racism. Unlike others in his kingdom who ignore injustice, Ars takes action. He pulls his chair beside Rei and demands that he be treated as an honored guest. Embarrassed, the servants quickly serve Rei a proper meal, which he enjoys. During their talk, Rei opens up about his past. He explains that he grew up among mercenaries who raised him like family. But in a recent battle, they were all killed, leaving him alone in a cruel world. Feeling sympathy, Ars takes him to his father's chamber and insists that Rei should be hired as his personal guard. Lord Raven, however, immediately refuses. He declares that Malcolms are worthless and have no real ability. Ars doesn't back down. He boldly claims that his instincts tell him Rei is blessed with talents far beyond any ordinary man in the continent. Intrigued, Lord Raven agrees to give Rei a chance, but only if he can prove himself in combat. Ars trembles at the thought. His father isn't just strong. He is one of the greatest swordsmen in the entire continent. He tries to argue that it won't be a fair fight, but Raven ignores him and heads straight to the training grounds. There, surrounded by guards, Raven announces the test. If Rei can land a single strike on him within the time limit, he will be accepted. If not, Rei must leave immediately. The duel begins. Raven charges forward with a powerful slash and Rei barely dodges. Even with a wooden sword, the attack is strong enough to kill. The second blow is blocked, but Rei quickly realizes just how terrifyingly fast and strong this man is. Still, to everyone's shock, Rei manages to withstand his assaults. No one has ever survived more than one strike from Lord Raven. The crowd watches in disbelief as the duel intensifies. Raven strikes Rei's shoulder, knocking him to the ground. But Rei refuses to give up. He rises again, this time with a serious expression, and unleashes his full strength. He rushes forward, sliding beneath Raven's guard, and uses the sunlight to blind him for just a moment. Rei strikes from behind, but even then, Raven manages to block it. It's the closest anyone has ever come to landing a blow on the legendary swordsman. Just as Rei gains momentum, Raven calls out that time has expired. But instead of dismissing him, he declares Rei the winner, acknowledging his incredible skill. Ars is overjoyed, and even Lord Raven admits that Rei is truly blessed with God-given talent. The guards, impressed, gather around Rei, asking for tips and begging to train with him. That night, Rei is formally welcomed into the household. Wearing ceremonial clothes, he kneels and pledges his loyalty to Ars. Months pass, and Rei becomes an integral part of the family. At first, the other workers treated him with prejudice because of his background. But slowly, as they witnessed his kindness, skill, and intelligence, their attitude changed. He began training soldiers, improving their swordsmanship, and studying under the family's tutor. His intelligence grew so rapidly that he soon became one of the sharpest minds in the household. Even the maids, who once looked down on him, now admire him for his gentle nature and striking appearance. Over time, Rei and Ars also begin studying together, diving into the history of the continent and the political state of each domain. They learn about the Summerforth Kingdom, once the most powerful nation but now in serious decline. The old king has died, leaving behind only his 8-year-old son. Real power lies in the hands of greedy politicians who seek to manipulate the child king for their own gain. And so, with Rei's strength and wisdom, Ars realizes that together, they might one day change the fate of their kingdom. The political situation in the kingdom is becoming more unstable by the day. With the young king too weak to rule and corrupt officials grabbing as much power as they can, the government is unable to govern properly. Rebellions are spreading across the land, and many dukes and lords are ignoring the crown, instead raising their own personal armies to handle conflicts on their own. Ars realizes that their county has been peaceful so far, but the fact that his father trains daily and quietly prepares more soldiers means trouble could erupt at any moment. Determined to be ready, Ars decides to search for more talented people like Rei who can strengthen their side if war ever comes, though deep down, he hopes it never will. Curious, Ars asks Rei where the first conflict might break out if war did erupt. Rei answers without hesitation, the neighboring county, whose lord is very old and frail. The man could die at any time, and his death will almost certainly spark a war of succession. The lord's older son is the rightful heir by law, but the younger son is far more capable and would make a better leader. If the succession isn't resolved before the old man dies, both brothers will fight, and the entire kingdom will be forced to take sides. Ars then asks which side his father would choose. Rei replies that they would likely support the elder brother, since he is the lawful heir. Ars nods, knowing his father can handle such matters for now, but he secretly worries what might happen if something went wrong and his father was no longer around. Rei reminds him that the key is to find excellent talent who can strengthen their county and ensure its survival. Ars wholeheartedly agrees, and the two set off toward the nearby town to begin their search. Before they leave, Raven stops them and tells them to keep an eye out for a good mage. A powerful wizard, he says, can often decide the outcome of an entire battle. Ars reflects on this. Unlike his father, he has no aptitude for magic. Even when he was given a magical gem in the past, nothing happened. Since then, no one has asked him to try again. Leaving their small county, Ars and Rei arrive in the nearby town, which is much larger and wealthier than their own. The streets are busy, the buildings grand, and the marketplace overflowing with goods. Ars dreams aloud of someday making his county flourish like this, but Rei simply smiles. As they begin searching for talent among the townspeople, Ars grows discouraged. No one seems to possess even above-average skills. Tired, he sits down, but Rei reassures him not to give up. With a population of 50,000, 10 times larger than their home village, there must be someone special out there. While walking through the wide streets, Ars notices a narrow alley where poor beggars lie sleeping in the open. Shocked, he wonders how a city so rich could also harbor such poverty. Rei gives him a valuable lesson. Wherever there is wealth, there will also be deep poverty. The words make Ars quietly reconsider his dream of making his home exactly like this city. Later, they reach the bustling main market. Ars's eyes sparkle as he takes in the dazzling array of goods. Suddenly, a shady merchant calls out, boasting that he has dragon eggs imported from a distant continent. Instantly excited, Ars imagines raising his very own dragon, riding it across the skies and showing it off to everyone. Without hesitation, he asks for the price. With a sly grin, the merchant offers the so-called rare eggs for only 1 silver each. Ars eagerly pulls out his money, ready to buy 3, but Rei stops him. Drawing his dagger, Rei presses it to the merchant's throat, accusing him of selling counterfeit goods to a noble, a crime punishable by death. The merchant stammers in protest, but Rei explains why it's impossible. For over a year, imports from other continents have been banned, meaning the eggs could not have arrived legally. Even if they were smuggled, dragon eggs are far too rare for a lowly swindler to be selling them in bulk. To Rei, the man is clearly a fraud. He prepares to eliminate the crook, but Ars intervenes, urging him to stand down. Realizing he went too far, Rei immediately apologizes, accepting any punishment Ars might give him. Ars, however, tells him not to worry. Afterward, the two sit down for lunch. Ars goes to buy dessert from a nearby stall, but just as he steps away, a thief crashes into him, snatches his money pouch, and bolts. The boy runs swiftly through the crowded streets, but Rei reacts instantly. Grabbing Ars, he pulls him into pursuit. The thief darts through the alleys, weaving past the crowd, but Rei manages to snag the cloak from his shoulders, revealing the culprit, a young, blue-haired girl. The girl races into a back alley, but when Rei arrives, he finds her cornered by a gang of hoodlums. One of them punches her to the ground while the others laugh. Ars rushes forward to stop them, but the leader turns on him and raises his fist. Before he can land the blow, Rei seizes the man's arm and counters with a crushing punch to the gut, knocking him out cold. The remaining 2 thugs charge, but Ray dispatches them just as quickly, forcing them all to the ground. Ars looks at the girl through his magic eye and is stunned to discover that she possesses S-rank magic skills. The stats are incredible, so high that he can hardly believe his eyes. Without hesitation, he asks her to join him and become his vassal. Ray interrupts, pointing out that this girl is a thief, but Ars doesn't care. He promises her a comfortable life, with good food and a proper salary. The girl glares down at Ars with contempt. She says she'd rather die than serve under a spoiled noble child like him. To her, all nobles are corrupt parasites who line their pockets by exploiting the poor. She reveals that she herself was once enslaved by a noble, only to escape, which is why these men were trying to capture her again. Ars tries to reason with her, insisting she would make an excellent mage, but she coldly replies that she's never even attempted to use magic. Realizing the situation is hopeless, Ray asks her to at least return the stolen pouch. Surprisingly, she hands it back without protest. Just then, a group of small children rush into the alley, gathering around the girl. Ars and Ray realize she has been looking after these orphans, stealing only to feed and protect them. Feeling guilty, Ars returns the pouch to her, and soon they leave. Later that night, Ars sits on the balcony, troubled by thoughts of whether he'll ever find such talent again. Suddenly, cries echo through the streets. A group of children rush in, sobbing that men attacked and kidnapped the thief girl, whose name is Char. Ars and Ray set out immediately. Meanwhile, Char is dragged to the other side of the city and thrown before a slave trader. The thugs beat her, but she refuses to shed a single tear. The slaver orders them to avoid damaging her face, as the noble who wants to buy her demands she remain pretty. As they rough her up, one thug discovers the money pouch Ars had given her. He snatches it, only for Char to lunge forward, seize it back and make a desperate run for freedom. But the men are faster, quickly pinning her to the ground again. The slaver mocks her, telling her to accept her fate. Even if she escaped, he says, she would live a miserable life on the run until she met a terrible end. Just as he's about to break her spirit further, the door slams open with a crash, sending the guard flying. Ray storms in, blocking the first attack and cutting down 2 goons with ease. He hurls his knife at another, dropping him instantly. The slaver quickly orders everyone to stop, hoping to negotiate. Ars rushes into the room behind Ray and immediately asks Char if she's okay. She is shocked to see him there. The slaver sizes Ars up, realizing from his clothes and manner of speaking that he must be a noble. Calmly, the slaver asks what business he has here. Ars firmly replies, "Release the girl." The slaver smirks, saying he cannot. Selling slaves is perfectly legal in this country, so he's done nothing wrong. Ars snaps back that he doesn't care about the law. Char, fearing for his safety, pleads with him to run away. But Ars ignores her, glancing at her stats again through his magic eye. He sees her ambition has dropped to a single point, proof that she has lost all hope for her future. Ars then declares that every person deserves hope, a dream, and a future to strive for. The slaver laughs at this naive idealism, mocking the boy for thinking slaves can dream of anything more than serving a master. Enraged, Ars shouts that adults are meant to protect children, not exploit them. It should be her choice to decide her own future, not scum like him. Char is deeply moved. Memories rush through her mind, of living alone on the streets, of sleepless nights in dark alleys during storms, of endless winters without shelter. She survived only by stealing, yet could never provide enough for herself or the children she tried to protect. For the first time in years, someone is standing up for her. Tears flow down her face, something she thought she had forgotten how to do. The slaver's patience wears thin. He says he showed respect only because Ars is a noble, but now this brat is interfering in business he doesn't understand. More thugs descend the stairs surrounding the group. The slaver warns that they'll all be crushed. Ars looks at Ray, but Ray reassures him to stay calm. One thug sneers at Ars, telling him to shut up. In an instant, Ray grabs the man by the throat, lifts him into the air, and slams him down. Coldly, he warns the others that insulting Lord Ars was a fatal mistake, and the punishment for such insolence is death. The goons try to gang up on him, one breaking a bottle as a weapon, but Ray moves with impossible precision. He dodges every blow, strikes back with surgical accuracy, slashes multiple opponents, and hurls his knife into another. The fight escalates, but Rei's dominance is absolute. One thug tries to grab Rei from behind with a knife, but Rei slams him into the ground like it's nothing, scaring the slaver out of his wits. In a panic, the slaver calls for backup. Two mages who immediately start chanting fire spells. They unleash blasts of flame straight at Rei, but he simply slices through their magic and knocks them out with ease. Terrified, the slaver plays his trump card. From upstairs, a hulking giant of a man comes stomping down, chugging ale as he asks what the commotion's about. When the slaver explains, the brute gets furious and charges in to throw Rei out. Char warns Ars that this guy is real trouble and that they should run. But Ars calmly checks his stats and assures her it'll be an easy fight. Sure enough, Rei dodges the giant's first strike by swinging from a chandelier, then dives down to deliver a brutal kick to the man's face. The brute gets even angrier and rushes again, but Rei is too skilled. With one clean uppercut to the chin, he knocks the big man out cold. Now shaking, the slaver protests that what Ars is doing is illegal. But Ars simply tosses down a pouch of coins and declares he's buying the girl. The slaver hesitates, claiming she's already been sold to another noble. That's when Rei steps in, threatening him. Either take the money and let them walk out, or refuse and deal with an angry noble himself. Cornered, the slaver folds and accepts the deal, officially selling Char to Ars. By the time they leave, morning has already broken. Before heading back, Char insists on showing them something. She leads them up a hill where Ars struggles to keep up, but finally they reach the top and the breathtaking view of the town below. Char explains this was her secret place where she came whenever life felt unbearable. Sharing it with them is her way of saying thank you. While Ars takes in the view, Rei hands her a magic locket to test her abilities. Nervously, she admits she's never tried magic before and doubts she even has any. But the moment she chants a spell, an overwhelming surge of mana bursts from her. A massive fireball rockets into the sky, exploding with dazzling force. The shockwave stuns not just Ars and Rei, but half the town below. Later, Char returns to her orphans one last time, promising to visit them soon, before joining Ars and Rei on the journey home. When they finally arrive, Ars proudly introduces her to his father. At first, Raven mistakes her for a new maid, dismissing the idea of a female mage and insisting women belong in the kitchen, not the battlefield, but Jar immediately proves him wrong. She fires a colossal fire blast into the sky, leaving Raven completely stunned. In an instant, his attitude shifts. He folds like a deck of cards and welcomes her into the Luvent family with open arms. And with that, Ars's party gains a powerful new ally. Together, they step inside the estate, ready for the many adventures that lie ahead. If you enjoyed this part, make sure to subscribe for Part 4, and check out this brand new anime about a lonely orphan who marries his childhood crush and begins training to become a spy.